I'm Trent Palmer. I fly drones for a living and bush planes for fun. Follow along as I journey off the beaten path of aviation. Good morning, guys. So I'm gonna try something different today. We're gonna post a full-length flight, which I've been avoiding because it just goes against everything I have in my being. Just knowing that my background as far as film and video goes is from the commercial world. I used to edit national TV spots that all lived in a 15 or 30-second window. So the idea that I'm about to post a half-hour or 45-minute, maybe even longer video just doesn't feel right. But I'm gonna go ahead and get GoPros rigged up. And for those of you that follow me on Instagram, you probably saw I did a, hey, ask me any question. So while we're doing the boring part, flying between landings, I'm gonna do a Q&A with you guys, answer some of your guys' questions. And yeah, I guess we'll see how this goes. Now we are just waiting for the engine to come up to temp before I even start
taxiing. Dead traffic, Kitfox 42 Delta Foxtrot, left downwind for 08, stead.
And I'm gonna get my headset cable out of my way. I don't think I need to show this whole section of things, but what I would be interested in seeing is, does this thing throw a fault when you lose a lane? So I'm gonna turn the RPM up a little bit, throw this. It doesn't, oh, there it goes, it just shows. Okay, so I actually haven't flown this since Nick and I worked on this, which was just the other day. So this is almost like a test flight of not only the new screen, but I gotta remember that we rebled the brakes. So I am feeling those out right now. And also the new landing gear, I guess there's a chance that the alignment could be different. So I'll probably take it easy. I think I'll probably just do a lap, land on the dirt runway out here just to feel everything out. And then we'll head off and go play. I'm gonna go ahead and take the runway here, I think. That's the traffic. Freedom Fox taking runway 8 at Alpha 3. I'm gonna switch over to the dirt runway. I'll be inside of you there, Fred.
This way, Trent. Dead traffic, Kitfox 42 Delta Foxtrot, left downwind for 08, stead.
Alright, start my roll with half flaps. I've got myself trimmed all the way forward. I'm gonna get lined up, get into the power, release the brakes, lift the tail, and I'll do flaps and rotate, and ease out that final click of flaps. Nice. I think I must have this headset on a different setting than my previous one as far as noise canceling, because it sounds louder in here than it normally does. Wonder why. So traffic, Freedom Fox left crosswind, we'll be switching to runway 7 dirt. Oh yeah, one of the things, the Stead Airport, the previous manager, Mike Scott, actually put in a dirt runway for us. You know, we were trying to find places to land.
Dead traffic, Kitfox 42 Delta Foxtrot, turn on left base for 08, option, Stead.
We were trying to find places to land in the dirt next to the existing runways, and he just kind of said, well, why don't we make you a dirt runway? And he actually followed through, which is awesome. So we have a really great place to train in the dirt here, so you're not wearing out your bush wheels and all that, which I think is, you know, super awesome. A lot of airport managers probably wouldn't be so kind. So traffic, Freedom Fox, turning left base, runway 7 dirt.
Stead traffic, Kitfox 42 Delta Foxtrot, turning final 08, option, Stead.
And also Fred, who is on the paved runway next to me, trains in a Kitfox. He's got one of the factory-built LSAs. My brother actually trained with them. It's an awesome, awesome way to get into this kind of flying. For those who are thinking they want to get their tail wheel or want to kind of do the backcountry thing, first choice for me would be stick and rudder aviation up in Homedale or Greenleaf, Idaho. And second would be meeting with someone like Fred. Okay. Well, it tracks straight. Brakes are pretty good. It feels like I might have got a little bit of fluid on them. I wasn't like mashing on them, but they felt plenty good to get out and play. So I'm gonna retrim for takeoff, which again, I land full aft trim, takeoff full nose down trim. The traffic, Freedom Fox on the roll, runway 7, we'll be departing northbound. I need to take some pitch out of my prop. With the colder temps, I'm not making the full RPM I want on takeoff. So with the cold, thick air, just need to flatten it up a little bit so I can get a little bit more power out of the engine. Okay, we are gonna point this baby north, go find a little area to screw around on. This is gonna be kind of like a backyard flight for me, just kind of my regular, everyday, cruising around, playing type flight. And like I said, those of you that follow me on Instagram probably saw that I did one of those stories asking you guys to ask me a question. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, you probably should. But as we are heading north, I guess I will go ahead and get started. Open this up. I was actually blown away how many messages or how many responses I got to this. So let me see if I can...
Dead traffic, Kit Fox 42 Delta Foxtrot. Turn left downwind for 08 stead.
Okay. Let's start with this first one. Lane 17, Cabinet Co. says, where are some of the furthest from home destinations you've flown into in the Kit Fox? And honestly, it's just Oshkosh. You know, that's about, I think, 16 or 1,800 miles from Reno. So that's the farthest I've been, although Alaska's definitely on my hit list. Super basic question, how long does it take to typically land, refuel, and get back in the air? That totally depends on the airport we're at, and how close the fuel pump is to the runway and how long of a taxi it is in and how many people you're with. But if it's just me, landing, throwing some fuel in, getting going again, it's probably like a 10-minute break, I would say. Why Black Series and what size? Now that question from DJ Bester is about our little camper that we got. I knew at the time that we were going to get...
Fox, 42 Delta Foxtrot, turn on left base for 08 option stead.
Sorry, I'm going to turn that off so we don't have people squawking in the background. So, when we got that Black Series, we knew we were getting a Raptor. I knew I wanted the ability to camp more off-grid or overlanding. I think dispersed camping is of much more interest to me than going to an actual campground with like full hookups and all that. So the Black Series just kind of fit in that style of having the off-road capabilities. And it was small enough that I knew I could tow it with the Raptor. Small enough that it was manageable for Haley and I to get into as our first trailer. So I don't know, it was one of those things that I saw it. We got a pretty good deal on that one. We bought it used, so I don't think I mentioned that in that video, but saved a bunch of money off buying that thing new, and it had only been used a handful of times. So TPE88 asked, how would you go about buying a plane and getting your private license on a budget? Geez. So that's something that comes up a lot. The question of, should I buy a plane to train in versus renting one to get your license in? And it's tough because I think, at least me, I know, the type of plane I thought I would want to get when I was starting my training was one that I was looking at, like a Cherokee 6, something that I could fly my guys and my gear down to LA for a shoot. And obviously what I ended up getting after I got my pilot's license was the complete opposite direction. So I think throughout your training, you learn a lot more about what your demands are going to be, what you like about flying, what the type of flying you're going to want to do. So, I don't know, I also feel like if you know exactly the plane that you want, say, I have buddies that wanted a Kit Fox, they're getting a Kit Fox, that was all they wanted anyway. If you go and train with someone like Fred, who was in the pattern back there, and you're going to learn in a Kit Fox, and you know your only goal is to fly a Kit Fox, then yeah, get a Kit Fox. I still would probably train in someone else's to, at least have the instructor be extremely proficient in that aircraft versus the instructor trying to learn your Kit Fox with you. But for the most part, aside from like some unique instances, I would say it's best to just rent whatever flight school aircraft the instructor you're flying with has. That way you're not going out and doing all your messed up landings on your own airplane or putting extra fatigue and wear. I mean, when you're doing your training, you will forget some things, you will mess up some things, you're going to run that engine harder than you will once you have your license. So if possible, I would just train in a rental aircraft, and then once you have your certificate, go and look for the aircraft you want to own. And then also look into flying clubs. Those are good affordable options to having an aircraft at your disposal and keeping yourself in the air. Aviator T, how did you get started making content on YouTube? Man, so that was a weird kind of way that I fell into this. So let me give you a little backstory. I've always loved making videos. That's what I did, in middle school and high school. And then in high school, a lot of my friends were the guys that were like winning the Junior Olympics in skiing. I'm from Truckee, California, which is a pretty good ski town. So all my friends are going to be pro skiers. I was like, this is awesome. I should start filming that. So I used to make little ski edits that eventually turned into full-length videos, and that's how I got started in the film and video world. And then when I got the Kit Fox, I just found that I was so into flying, and there was just a lack of what I thought was good, you know, entertaining quality content about this kind of flying on the internet. It was like, if I wasn't flying, I wanted to go watch videos about flying and, you know, live vicariously through other people, and I just was underwhelmed and unimpressed by what was out there. So when I first got the Kit Fox, I started making just little flying edits, the same way that I would with skiing edits. It was like I put music on, there was no context. I'd bring a buddy to come shoot me with a drone, and we'd just film some stuff, and I'd edit it together as like a 3-minute video, and then that was it, and it was just for fun. And then I don't know how many of you guys follow Tutor. He's a paramotor guy. And I stumbled on one of his videos. I don't know, again, I was just, you know, going through the rabbit hole of YouTube. Happened to click on one of his videos, his vlogs, flying a paramotor, and somehow got sucked in. I mean, at the time, I know that we all have short attention spans, but mine was especially short back then. So the longest video you'd ever catch me watching on YouTube would be a few minutes long. And then somehow I sat through this like 20-minute video of this kid flying a paramotor, just talking to the camera, and it was entertaining. And I think a few months later, I happened to see another one of his videos and noticed that he had went from like, I don't know, I would say 20,000 subscribers to like 500,000. And I started thinking, whoa, what is this guy doing? And clearly there's a hunger for it, and clearly it's working. So that's, after seeing Tucker's video and seeing that he had a little success, decided I should try doing a vlog thing. I'm so uncomfortable on camera. Obviously, with enough practice, I've gotten a little bit better, but at first, oh, it was the hardest thing ever. So that is kind of what got me into it. I was like, I'll give it a shot. And, you know, with my main job in the film industry, I have breaks. You know, there's times where I'm gone 20 days out of a month, and then there's months that I don't even work. So it kind of was helping me fill in the gaps and keep myself busy. And you know, I figured with YouTube monetization, you could post these videos, and who knows, maybe they get views, you know, 10 years down the road, and you could make some kind of passive income. Maybe it was like an investment. So anyway, that's what started it. Obviously now it's taken over. It's basically one of my part-time jobs, semi-full-time, which is awesome, thanks to you guys. So, all right, I am over this big valley that is all BLM land. I've landed on this dirt road in front of me. This is actually where I shot the Raptor video. So I'm gonna go ahead and just put down kind of in this 2-track road, just for somewhere to land, and then we'll kind of keep working our way north. It's funny, all the lake beds right now are not dry lake beds. They are all full-blown lakes. So we have a kind of different landscape as far as bush flying right now than what we're typically used to. So I think I'll maybe just put it down in between the sagebrush. This is a really, really good kind of test of how, oh, that one's tall. Go a little over that. How precise you can be with your tires left and right, because this is about as wide as my tires are. There's some motorcycle dudes up on the hill probably wondering what the heck is going on. That airplane just landed on our road. They're not, they're just standing, but that's a fun little spot. Just a sandy little dirt road. This is exactly where I shot that video of my truck. Part of it was on this road. So anyway, retrimmed half flaps. I'll get lined up on this road. There's a pretty good rain rut on the left side that I'll keep my wheel out of. Let it build boost. Get the tail up. And we'll pull it off the ground. And we're airborne. And as I go quiet, I'm just retrimming, getting it to where I have no pressure on the sticks. Should fly hands off at all times. The Kit Fox is a very hands-off airplane. I know I have an autopilot, but it's funny, it rarely gets used because of the fact that right now I got this thing hands off right after takeoff. And say I want to turn left, all I have to do is add a little left rudder. The plane's going to lean. I can actually lean back or give it a little trim back. That'll be the elevator portion of pulling it through a turn. You don't even need to use the control stick. A couple taps on the trim. Sometimes leaning forward and back will do it, but Anyway, back to the questions. That was the how did I get started making content on YouTube. Jay Glover asked, how many passive streams of income do you have? Not that many. I've got to be honest with you guys, I am not a money guy. I've got this weird probably issue in my head that will probably be my demise, and at some point I will probably go fully broke and be like on the streets asking for money, but I'm not very incentivized by money. To me, it's just kind of this intermediary substrate that you hand to be able to get what you want. So if you have enough to do what you want and you set yourself up to where you aren't in imminent failure, I just don't see a huge advantage of just having a gigantic, overwhelming number in my bank account. I feel like the hours and minutes and seconds that we have here are way more valuable than any number in my bank account. So I don't plan as well as others would. But, the YouTube thing, like I just mentioned, with AdSense, that is a passive form of income. It normally isn't that much money. Like I absolutely could not live just off AdSense. Between the AdSense and the sponsors like Squarespace, which is sponsoring this video, and I'll tell you about them later, those help. Those help to where I could effectively live off my YouTube income. But as far as passive streams, it's really that right now, as well as like investments in our property and things like that. Obviously we have equity there, but that's not really a passive income stream. So still working on that. How do you recommend getting into aviation or getting your private pilot's license? Well, this is a hard one because normally the limitation, well, there's two limitations, but the primary one's going to be money. So that's a hard one to kind of attack because every situation's going to be different. Obviously saving, be frugal every way you can so that you can try to have the money to get yourself through the training when you're ready to jump into it. The second thing is, I'd start with just doing an intro flight. I highly recommend finding an instructor you jive with, and that might require you to go fly with a bunch of different instructors. So don't be afraid to move on, find a different instructor to, these guys are working for you. And I think so many students go in, they find an instructor that they end up not jiving with, and then they get demotivated because of maybe the instructor's teaching style isn't meshing with them, or maybe it's just a bad instructor. So I highly suggest just going out, getting in the cockpit with a couple flight instructors in your area, and then once you get into it, try to stay as current and as active as you can. Again, I know the limitations are both money, the second one being time. Those are hard things to come up with more of, but the quicker you can get through your training while your brain's absorbing all that information, the better you're going to absorb it, the better pilot I think you'll be, versus someone that, say, gets in the cockpit once a month. I think, honestly, when you're that spaced out, the first half of your flight is just catching back up to where you were before. So the more current you can stay, the more you can stay in the cockpit, the more efficient you'll be during your training, and the better luck you're going to have. So, yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents on that. So up to my right is what we call Rocky Meadow, which is a strip I pioneered a long time ago. It's just a meadow, but when overflying it, it was very evident there were rocks. And, such as the world, especially out here, we have a lot of rocks everywhere. And they tend to be hidden pretty well behind, like, sagebrush or little cheatgrass and that kind of stuff. So this one was one that, I overflew it a bunch of times, tried to pick little stumps and bigger rocks as my kind of points to reference points, and landed there kind of not knowing, hoping and praying at some point, because the grass could be hiding some stuff that, bush wheels should roll over, but you never know. So that first time landing somewhere is always the highest risk, and that's when all I did was shut down, get out, walk to the whole thing. I think I had a buddy with me at the time, so we walked it all, figured out the best place to kind of call a strip. We went out, put some rock piles or rock cairns out, so it's got a edge, basically the south edge of the runway. And then now, so many other people have been coming in and out of here. It's like almost looks like an actual runway. You can't miss it. It's quite a different beast than the first time I landed here. Now this is like easy street. So you may notice some of the time when I land, I get rid of flaps right away. And sometimes I leave them in. And basically the effect that flaps have on me on that landing rollout or, right on touchdown is that when I get rid of them, it does two things. One, it spoils lift, so there's no ballooning, there's no floating. You can get all the all the pressure on your tires to be able to get maximum braking. But the second thing it does is it drops my tail down, so my tail can stay on the ground again to help with braking without nosing over. But right there, you know, I had plenty of runway, and I actually left the flaps in so that I could keep it on the mains a little longer, no brakes involved, just riding up the hill, a little bit more tail high, just so I could see where I'm going. So when you're wondering why sometimes I'm rapidly getting rid of brakes, that's going to be more of a extreme short field procedure versus, you know, just casually landing on an uphill. So anyway, retrimmed half flaps. Again, it probably would be smarter. I should just start with full flaps because then my tail comes up quicker. But I'm just so used to doing the flaps and rotate, it's like I don't know what to do with my hand. So one thing I will say that's great that you might notice that I do with this engine in particular is as soon as I'm off the ground, I just pull the throttle back. It's got such a surplus of power, you know, at these elevations compared to other planes that I don't need to be burning. I think this thing will burn 11 or 12 gallons an hour at full throttle, so I don't need to be burning that kind of fuel. I'm plenty off the ground. I can still have a very sufficient positive rate of climb at a lower fuel burn and a little bit quieter of a cockpit. So, okay, next question. Chancey Matthews says, I live on the East Coast and I want to get into backcountry flying. Do I have to go to SW, which I'm assuming is the Southwest? No, but you know what? The hard thing about backcountry style or bush style flying on the East Coast is that there's very little public land over there, and there's very few backcountry style airstrips. Now there still are quite a few like private or very small remote grass airstrips that you can play on, but if you're looking to do the truly public lands, we're going out and landing, you know, where we find open space, I think you kind of have to work your way west. But as far as getting into it and doing all your training and learning, you can absolutely do it over there. And I have plenty of friends that fly bush planes and have awesome adventures over on the East Coast. So I don't think you have to move over here, but I think the best bush flying is over here. Webb Thomas, didn't you start out with RC planes, and if so, how deep into that did you get? Yes, actually, I got my first RC plane when I was like, well, my first one, I was a kid, and it was like a really cheap one, and it was such a letdown. We got one, we spent all this time, my dad and I, building it together, and the first toss, my dad threw it, and in my head, it was like his bad toss that it went straight into the ground, but in hindsight, knowing the quality of what that RC plane was, I think it was just not an aircraft that was going to fly. And it was, you know, kind of before electric was a feasible way to fly RC planes. But my second plane, I think I was about 15, saved up all my allowances or my money from working for my dad. My dad had a sign shop that I used to work at his shop every day after school. So I saved up money, bought this trainer that I think was a 40 size nitro-powered RC plane, and it was awesome because it came with a little computer simulator that was super primitive, but that probably saved me so much money and so much time and so many heartaches of crashes that I was able to just, you know, hit the reset button on the simulator. So anyone that's thinking about getting into RC, like traditional, not drone RC, you know, the simulator is an invaluable piece to that. The only thing is you got to remember not to play it like a video game. Like, add some consequence. You shouldn't just be hitting the reset button. Try to like build skills, you know, actually work on getting better at flying. See if you can land that thing on center line every single time. If you crash more than 3 times, walk away. You know, give yourself a little bit more consequence. But yeah, I'm that guy that as a kid used to make my parents buy the Discovery Flight Channel. I was always super fascinated with flying and planes, and I had flying dreams all the time. The problem was I was scared of heights, deathly scared of heights, and scared of flying. Anytime I'd get on a commercial airline, I'd be terrified. So the way that I experienced flight back then was through radio control, through the safety of standing on the ground. So I didn't get that into it. You know, most of my flying would probably be closer to like what people would consider bashing. Most of the planes I bought were built to be indestructible. We'd go out and try to hit each other out of the air, kind of combating. So I was more like the redneck type flyer. I wasn't the guy flying big scale planes, so I didn't go that far into it. And then RC helicopters, the original reason I bought an RC helicopter was to put a camera on it. I ended up getting hooked on just flying 3D and doing all the stunts, so I went way farther down the RC heli rabbit hole than I did the RC plane. I think I spent probably 2 or 3 years just, my only hobby was flying RC helicopters. I'd go out every weekend and I would just, you know, spend all my money on RC helicopters. But yeah, Jacob Stanford, any advice for someone someone looking to purchase and own their first airplane? Geez, right now it's just such a hard time, I think, for everything in the world. Obviously, we're seeing like the highest inflation we've seen in 30 years. I think the aircraft market kind of almost led that with getting more expensive. So when I bought my airplane, it was a different market. It was easy to find affordable ones. But, you know, depending on your budget, I would say define your budget and then save up a little extra, because whatever plane you're going to get, you should anticipate having some little issues. So, you know, kind of look that through. And also, don't overlook insurance. I have had some friends buy airplanes and then realize later that it was either not possible to insure or it was going to be so costly to insure that they couldn't afford to own and operate it anymore. So things like tailwheel, things like experimental, basically like this plane, could be extremely expensive insurance-wise for a low-hour pilot. So those are things to look out for. And then also, like, you know, look at the maintenance. You know, simplicity is king, I think, with a lot of these things. So the less moving parts, the less that you have to go wrong is going to lead to lower maintenance costs overall. So let's do one more as I'm working on final into, what is this? This is State Line Meadow. We're right on the California-Nevada border. Mackenzie Rice asked, do you like to ski? And if so, can you make ski content? Oh, skiing. So you guys might not know this, but like I kind of mentioned earlier, ski videos is how I got into the film industry. I used to make ski videos, slaying DVDs out of my 4Runner at ski resort parking lots. Like I said, I grew up in a ski town, so I've been on snow. And actually, another fun fact, my dad started the first downhill ski shop in Truckee, California. Prior to that, there was only a Nordic ski shop, so he had me on skis from the time I could basically walk. And through the ski filming days, which were my high school and college, I used to ski, you know, 100 days a year. I spent a lot of time on the snow, normally camera in hand, but I think I burnt myself out. And plus back then, passes were so cheap as a local high school student. Everyone had discounts. We knew all the lift operators. We were able to get easy parking. Like every day after school, it would be like I got out of class and I was clicked in going down a ski run half an hour later. And nowadays, it's just all the resorts have turned into these villages that, you know, you have to take, you park miles away, you take a shuttle to walk through a village, to take a tram to get to the first ski lift, to then get to the top. And it's like, it's such an event to get up there and actually click in that I'm not as incentivized to do it anymore. That was weird. I saw what looked like a rock kind of last second. So I tried to float past it. I'm sure it wasn't. I'm sure it was one of these little gopher holes, but it kind of spooked me. So I held it off a little longer and tried to do a one-wheel kind of, I don't know, wheelie over it. But either it wasn't a rock or I missed it. So the weird thing is I don't ever remember there being rocks at this place. I've walked it so many times. So yes, skiing. I'm very comfortable on skis. I'm competent, but I don't do much of it anymore. And honestly, I think it's a crowd thing, and that's what you guys will probably learn about me. I guess it's probably pretty evident by the lifestyle I choose to live that I work in the film industry and avoid LA at all costs, and I you know, try to live as remote and out there as possible. That I don't love crowds. So you know, recently I got back into snowmobiling. I used to be into it in high school. Got a new snowmobile last year. To me, if there's good snow, that's my way to get out there and enjoy it. You know, no crowds. And honestly, I think powder turns on a snowmobile going downhill are better than powder turns on skis. All right, that was State Line Meadow. So basically, I was almost on, actually it's probably more of that trajectory, but I have now crossed into California, and we are going to drop down what I think is a really fun little canyon here. I know I've probably done this whole lap with you guys before, but never full length. So, Jared, have you ever flown floats? If so, do you prefer floats to wheels? I have not yet. And my good buddy Kevin Sloan has a float plane, actually a float plane school up here that he trains on Tahoe and Stampede, which is one of our kind of playgrounds for bush flying. And he's been telling me I need to get in with him, and I absolutely would love to learn to fly on floats. As far as me ever thinking, is it better than bush wheels? I think it's going to be area dependent. That might be something that, you know, out towards the East Coast or like, hell, Minnesota, what's that land of 10,000 lakes? I don't know what the legality is of landing on all those lakes, but somewhere like that, I think floats would probably be the same freedom that I have with bush wheels here. And given that I live in the desert, I think floats probably don't make as much sense because there's just overall not as much water in the desert. So I have yet to do float plane rating. I would like to. Let me know if you guys think I should dive into that, you know, kind of make that more of a priority, and obviously I'd document the whole experience so you guys could learn a little too. Sounds fun. I'm sure I'd love it. Ski flying is another thing that I would love to try too, and again, we just don't get enough consistent snowpack over here for me to justify skis. And I feel like if I did, say, you know, straight skis, obviously not, but wheel penetration skis mean that when you get into really soft snow, they don't seem to work quite as good as straight skis. And then the retract skis are pretty, you know, a lot more expensive, a little more heavy. Just, it seems like too much complexity for what it would be worth. Again, you know, maybe we'll go into the next ice age and I'll be like, screw bush wheels, I'm flying skis. But for the time being, I think bush wheels are my favorite. Fly over my house in Sparks, right off Queens. I can't do that. No, you know, flying over buzzing houses, absolute big no-no. I'm dealing with a little thing with the FAA right now. I'm almost 2 years into where I made an approach at a friend of mine's backyard that I was invited to land at, and it, you know, I got within 500 feet of a house. So I'm trying to be on my best behavior. I'm not a guy that buzzes anyway, but definitely for the time being, sorry man, can't fly over your house. Blake Fillion, if you were to get a second plane, what would you get and why? I must know. There's two different approaches to this, Dreamland and semi-reality, because both of them are more like Dreamland to me because I definitely don't have the money to afford two planes. But, you know, Dream World, I'd probably have something like a Kodiak or maybe like Pilatus PC-12 is pretty rad. I want something that I could bring more people. And as far as having like the dirt bike of the sky, this plane is that. I am super happy with this. And I think compared to other bush planes, the Kit Fox seems to balance some of my other needs more, that it's really comfortable. I like side-by-side seating. It cross-country cruises pretty well. It's pretty efficient. And obviously, being experimental, I can do all the maintenance myself. But the more realistic second plane that I would like, and it's actually been on my list, and it's kind of after I build the hangar, if I ever build the hangar, if prices can ever be within reason, it would be my next project, which would be building an RV-10. I just got a couple buddies that have those. It's kind of like the experimental version of a Cirrus that I would love to have, a 4-seat plane with a big engine on the front. I'd put a parachute in it and do it IFR, and that way you could fly like real IFR, and if you had an engine out, you have an option, you know. I think a lot of people kind of scoff at the parachute thing. I think obviously Mike Patey explained it as cleanly as anyone can, that, you know, having that as an option never hurts. And being someone that had my engine quit once and got scared more than I thought I would, I think a parachute at that time would have been worth its weight in gold, even though I probably wouldn't have used it then, but there's other places that I could be that if my engine quit, I would absolutely pull that over trying to pull a hat trick and, you know, land in a tree top or, you know, on a cliff face or something like that. So, Weir Alexer, can you fly your Kit Fox in other countries? Can you take it to Canada or Mexico? Yeah, you can. I am not super up to speed with the legalities and the rules of all that, but I know you can, because I have plenty of friends that have experimental aircraft and fly them over borders. Insurance, I know my insurance clearly states something about Mexico, so I would have to call them and figure out and make sure I'm covered. And I would definitely want to be covered if I'm flying in a country like Mexico. And as far as Canada, I know you can. And at some point, I hope to make that trip because I owe it to myself, and it's a bucket list item that I need to fly this thing to Alaska. And the only reason I haven't yet is because it's a huge commitment time-wise. And I don't know, I'm bad at making those commitments. And normally you look at something like Oshkosh, which when we do it, takes up about 2.5 weeks of the summer to go and fly up to or out to Oshkosh, spend the week there, and then work our way home. So in addition to Oshkosh being gone for that long, hasn't made that much sense, but one of these years I gotta make it happen, and it would require me to fly through Canada. Okay, Water Lowell W. Are there typically any restrictions when it comes to off-field landings? Yes, and most of it's going to be land ownership, and that varies by state. So, like in Nevada, as long as you have verbal consent to land on someone's property, typically that's enough. In California, I've been told you need written consent. Again, this is all kind of through what I've been told from other people that have been doing this much longer than me. If I was told I had to show you a piece of, a rule or regulation that says that, I'm not able to do that because it's difficult to find. But for the most part, the clear and cut and dry ones are don't land on private property that you don't have permission to land on, and avoid wilderness or wildlife study areas or any of that kind of stuff because there are no motor vehicles allowed there. So what I do for the most part, I use an app called OnX. I use the off-road version because it shows off-road trails, but that shows me land ownership. Out in Nevada, 85% of Nevada's public lands, I think over 60% is just open BLM land that we can go and land on. So outside of that, use common sense. Don't go landing anywhere that you see that you might be damaging, either the vegetation or the wildlife. Try to go land, and then luckily in the desert, most of the stuff we're landing on is just kind of a open dirt field anyway. So that's my spiel on off-field landings. Greg Schuster, favorite non-tail wheel plane? That's a good question. I'm gonna go back to maybe the RV-10. That thing looks pretty cool, but then the Kodiak. Kodiak is such a cool airplane. Okay, the Bog Walker. What's your Fox payload and the most you've hauled? How does it impact your flight? So my plane currently weighs, I think I'd have to look at the last weight and balance I did, but I think I'm right at like 928 pounds. And my gross weight is set at 1550. So what's the math on that? 612 pounds is my useful load. I've had it almost up there. There was a time during COVID that I was the heaviest I'd ever been, and I took some friends that were about 250 with full fuel, a little bit of baggage, and I'm sure we were getting pretty close to there. And what I will say, with the standard wing on a kitbox, for those of you that don't know, I have the STI, which is the STOL-inspired wing. Slightly larger wing, meaning that it's got a longer cord. It's got a little bit more under camber to it, which helps it create lift at low speeds, and it's a little higher profile, again, helps the airfoil be more effective at low speeds. With this wing, it does not affect me nearly as much as my old wing. So the standard wing, my difference in takeoff roll, and again, this was like a 100-horse Rotax, going solo to throwing a passenger in it would double my takeoff roll. Now, with my current setup, having the turbo engine, which makes gobs of power, and the big wing, it doesn't affect me nearly as much. So, hot summer day, full gross, all that, like I'm probably gonna want a longer area to land. I kind of tell people my safe area when they say how much room do you need to land. I just tell them 400 feet. And sure, I can show you guys video of me landing in 50 feet, and on a calm day at sea level when it's solo, or when I'm solo, I can land in 100 feet. But 400 is I can get in and out pretty much all the time, barring some crazy high density altitude with a tailwind. If it's 400 feet, I'm going to be able to make use of that. So, kind of long-winded version of that answer. I'm a little over 600 pounds useful. My baggage capacity, I'd have to look again. It's changed since my CG has changed since I took off the constant speed prop. I think I can probably hold 120 pounds, which is actually pretty hard. Normally I run out of space before I run out of baggage allowance weight-wise. Okay, Lematics photo. Hey Trent, what is the best plane for beginners who want to travel? Beginners who want to travel, you know, any of the smaller Cessnas are great aircraft. You know, 172, 182 is an incredible airplane. Even a Piper Pacer, that's probably the most underrated and highest value, you know, input to output, the best bang for your buck plane to me is a Piper Pacer. Those things, you know, I've got friends that have Tri-Pacers that were converted to tailwheel that have an awesome performing little plane with very little money into them. So as far as a beginner plane, you know, something like that. Again, I'm just kind of going off budget. If you have all the money in the world, heck, I don't know, the world's your oyster. Go for it. Team Babos, what did you fly before your kit box? Well, I bought my kit box right after I got my pilot's license. So my training, I started in a Cessna 172. Again, when I started my training, I was terrified of flying, terrified of heights. I was just doing it because I had to continue working in the film industry. And I never was comfortable in that plane. And that plane ended up breaking. And my flight instructor had a different plane. I was using a flight school's airplane, and he said, well, let's go train in my Cherokee. He had a Cherokee 140, but it had the 180 engine in it, I believe, so it made pretty good power. And I don't know what it was. That plane, like, from the outside, would scare you. Just looking at it, it was so raggy and ran down. But it flew super nice, and it clicked, and that's what changed my opinion on flying, was flying that little Piper Cherokee. So those were the two that I flew prior to the kit box. So also I should mention, I had never even seen a kit box in real life before I bought one, let alone flown in one or had my tail wheel or any of that. I bought, you know, sight unseen. It was going back to the financial thing. It wasn't the smartest financial move at the time. I was refining my house to get out of this, what was it, PMI or mortgage insurance payment, because I had done like one of those, you know, get you into the house quick loans. So I was refining to get out of that mortgage insurance payment, had some equity in my house. The loan guy was like, hey, you want to take some cash out? And I'm like, ooh, you know, I've been kind of looking at airplanes, was looking at airplane loans. Obviously, the interest rate on my house was much lower than an airplane loan, so I pulled cash out and bought an airplane. Haley pretty much wanted to divorce me because it was not the smartest financial move I've ever made, but in hindsight, it paid off pretty well because, you know, I owned the plane outright now that I sold the previous house, and it got me into the plane faster. But anyway, that was quite a tangent there. What was the final straw that moved you to buy a plane and fly the way that you do? I don't know that there was a final straw. I'm a pretty good guy that pretty common. I don't know, what would you even say? I have this characteristic that I jump into things before I'm really ready, you know, like kind of just, oh, wouldn't that be fun? And I start working things up. Before I know it, I'm jumping into something without saying there was a final straw. It's not like I thought about it forever. It was kind of like I loved flying. After I got my pilot's license, I was going and renting airplanes to give my friends rides and realizing that I was spending 120, 130 an hour. And that could be money I was putting towards my own airplane. So when I started looking at it from a standpoint of, well, I keep spending 120, 130 an hour to fly someone else's airplane, or I could buy something like a Kit Fox, which is economical to run, and be money forward through owning it. So I think that was the answer to that, the final straw. Pilot 2707, I'm curious when Nick will be flying with you again. How's he doing? You know, Nick is doing well. Since his accident, he's made the big shift in life into adulthood. And he was an adult prior to that, but he was still living with his parents. And since the accident, he kind of, you know, he got a house, he's gotten his act together, and he's got a lot more responsibility. So for those of you that haven't followed along, he's been building all the wiring harnesses for Kit Fox. So if you were to buy a Kit Fox and say you wanted to do a Garmin panel and you wanted one of their built wiring harnesses. That's what Nick does. So he's been very busy with those and hasn't had much time to work on his own plane, just because I think the wiring harnesses are rolling in so fast, and you know, everyone wants their stuff now. So I think his plane's kind of been a little bit on the back burner, but every time I talk to him, he's working on some other little cool thing he's going to add to his plane. So I know he's excited to get out and fly. So I think we're talking, or he's talking, hopefully having it flying before next summer. So yeah, I think that answers that. I'm hoping he comes out and flies again soon. And I've taken him up flying from time to time, and I probably should do a video of that because it's fun to get him back in here. But it's way more fun when he has his own plane and we're flying together. So I am on short final to what I call sucker punch. Now this one is one of the more difficult and I guess you would call it higher consequence places that I land. It's just shy of 8,000 feet. I think it's at 7,800 feet on the top of this mountain, and it's steep and short. The steep part helps with the short part because obviously gravity is helping you slow the plane down on landing and helping you get speed on takeoff. But it also likes to come up on you fast, which is why I called it sucker punch, is that sometimes I get in here and hit hard, which I didn't really do there. That was pretty nice. And yeah, that one's sucker punch. This one used to get my blood pumping pretty good. The good news is that there's a go around, and also there was a fire that came through here, not this summer, but the last summer, and it burned down all the sagebrush. So what used to be basically blind taking off up or landing up here, and you're just kind of looking for tracks and hoping, now it's much easier to see. And so basically this one is if you approach from the west like I did, if it's calm wind, that's how you always do it. Very steep, I would call it 300 foot long hill. Again, I'm at, it says 7,700, yeah, somewhere around there at the top. It's very steep, so that 300 feet feels longer. Right there, I didn't even touch the brakes at all. I actually had to power up to get to the top. But as it crests over here, there's probably another 300 feet on the flats up on the top of this thing that you could use as a go-around. Now the other thing, when we get a west wind in the afternoon, you can just land on this top part. However, it is flat, so landing flat with only 300 feet at almost 8,000 feet, you need that wind to make that work normally in a safe environment. Also, you still clear go-around, but super fun spot. This is, I don't know, I actually like the landing to the west the other way versus landing from the west like I did, because there's this white line of rocks that are a perfect threshold that if you short them, you're ripping your landing gear off, so don't short them. But when there's a good wind, you kind of just do this like hover down aircraft carrier landing, which is a blast. So I might go ahead and take off that way. I'm going to give myself a little extra space because, like I said, we're pretty high altitude right now. Luckily, it's pretty chilly out, but I do wish I had a little less pitch in my prop. And we'll get rolling. Looking for rocks. And there we go, we're off. And this one's fun because I can actually pull the throttle and go right into this canyon run. This was actually a place I was going to take my buddy Cade Palmer, which is Scott Palmer's brother, for him to speed wing fly. It's like, you know, paraglider, but much smaller, just a small parachute. He wanted to do a simultaneous launch with me, and I was going to run shuttle runs, and I could find a spot to land right below it, and I thought that would have been just awesome. And it's steep enough. I think the slope on it's like 2 to 1 the whole way down for a couple thousand feet. So it was an awesome spot. We never ended up making it happen. We tried one day, and my starter went out, or my sprag clutch went out. I think we went to start the plane, thing kicked back hard, and then had nothing. So the sprag clutch on my engine went out, and we were SOL. Okay, next one. How many hours did you have before feeling comfortable flying in the backcountry? That is by T.S. Colette? Colette? I don't know how you say that, but you know, comfort is relative, and I think there's times where I still am on edge that you might not call it full comfort. I'm confident in my abilities, but I always am really well aware of the diverse and ever-changing scenario and environment that comes with backcountry flying. So it took me a while. I would say probably 200-300 hours before I was, more confident in my skills. And it goes in waves. There's times where you kind of, you start. You land somewhere that's new to you and it's shorter than what you've been to and you just nailed it. Then you move on to the next one, you nail it again, and you start building this confidence. And, obviously with this kind of flying, you have to push the limits a little bit, and sometimes that requires finding the limits, and hopefully you do it in a way that doesn't wreck your airplane. But I definitely did, you get a little cocky, you push it a little too far, have a close call. Like normally for me, it was either almost running out of room, or like that one that you guys probably saw at High Sierra a few years ago, where that was like the dumbest move I've made, where I should have gone around, decided to try to land at that spot, and almost went off the other edge. So you have those little events that'll put you in check every once in a while. So I think the more I fly, the more I realize that comfort is a little bit of your enemy. You try not to ever be fully comfortable. Again, being confident in your skills and confident in anywhere you're going into prior to landing there is super important. But comfort, kind of living outside your comfort zone with this kind of flying. I'm going to try to answer this as I'm landing. Where can I get a private tutor? I guess I guess that question, who is that? That's from Alex MTB, mountain bike rider. MTB, is that? MTBR. But if you're talking for flying, any flight instructor can be your own private tutor, and that's what they are, at least in the cockpit. And then as far as ground school goes, that's your call if you want to pay them to help you learn the book stuff, because you can choose to just read books or do an online course and do it yourself, or you can pay someone to help walk you through it. So, find a flight school or a flight instructor nearby, and define your goals and your demands when you're looking for something like what you mentioned, a tutor. And as you guys might have noticed there, so that one I started feeling sink as I was coming in, and I anticipated possibly having a pretty rough touchdown, so I gave it a little bit more throttle, and which pushed me farther up the hill, which made my runway shorter. So as I landed, I got rid of flaps, and I did brake a little harder than I have on the past ones, and it was simply because I made that adjustment on final to not plop down too hard, which translated into a little bit more of a float at the end. So that's why you saw me doing that. Okay, Aiden Caps, how expensive is it to have flying as a hobby? Expensive. There's no ifs, ands, or buts around it, and I probably do it as cheaply as you possibly can, and it's still more expensive than most other hobbies and sports. I think there's even as a career thing, or what's the saying? How can you become a millionaire from flying? Easy, start as a billionaire. It's expensive, but mitigating those expenses with something like, a simple airplane, small airplane, like what I have, especially in the experimental realm, especially something with like a Rotax engine like this, which is a very economical, because you can burn car gas. The fuel burn on them is much lower than other engines, so you get your operating costs down, but obviously the acquisition cost of an airplane is always pretty expensive. You got your recurring costs like having a hangar, and that's going to vary based on where you are in the country or the world, and then insurance and that kind of stuff. So it varies. But how expensive is it? I would liken it to having something like a race car, like that you took seriously. Say you wanted to race desert. You're a guy that wanted to build out like a Razor even and race it actively. It's probably going to cost about as much as that. Kind of cliche, but do you have any future goals? Planes to fly, places to live. Love your videos. I always have, and that was by Kyle Gree. I always have future goals. I'm again, the hangar project, which I'm sure is going to be a question here. I just haven't gotten to it yet. But the reason I haven't jumped into the hangar, and you guys keep seeing me get other things in the meantime, is just the cost of steel has tripled in the time since last year when I quoted it to now. So the overall cost of the build doubled, and I just can't in my right mind pay what feels like such an inflated cost right now, knowing that it could hopefully go down. And obviously I don't have the cash to do that right now. So it's one of my future goals is to build the hangar. Future places to live, man, I mean, these are all pipe dreams because I don't think I'll ever be able to make that happen, but I would love to have a cabin up in the wilderness in Idaho or somewhere in Montana. Here I go again, trying to be away from people, but those are the places I want to live. So I'll go ahead and roll off the side of this hill, get it in the air. I don't need full throttle anymore, and we'll just drop into this little canyon. And actually, I normally run it to the right, but I think I'm going to go left, go play over there. I think I've landed over there once or twice, but can't really remember where, so we'll buzz around and see what things look like. This is literally right behind my house, so when we take the side-by-side out and, you know, give people the little desert tour, this is where I go. So I know this place really well, but I don't land out here that much. So back to future goals. Going back to the passive income thing that someone asked earlier, I should figure out something that gives me more passive income so I can continue to live the lifestyle that I live, which is pretty free and open. You know, I've the first 4 years of my company, when I took the leap and stopped editing and was just doing the drone stuff, when the phone wouldn't ring or wasn't ringing and I was at home not working, I would be in a full-blown panic. I never could relax. I'm figuring out, you know, trying to figure out how I could build the company. What do I need to do? What am I doing wrong? All this stuff. So it took me the first 4 or 5 years to learn to relax and enjoy my time off and have faith that the phone will ring. You know, again, I was independent contractor, so if I wasn't working, I wasn't making money. And if the phone wasn't ringing, then I wasn't making money. So through this shift I've learned in the past 5, 6, 7 years of my life, I've probably gotten a little too lackadaisical about that I really enjoy my time off, and I try to, I kind of value that more than my time working. So a future goal would be find a source of revenue that would facilitate that lifestyle, being that I want to be able to have the freedom to go do fun stuff when the opportunity arises without having work hold me back. That's not to say I don't want to work, because I do love working. You got to have a purpose, got to have a reason. You know, I am never someone that would be okay not working, but I like having control of when and where I work. So I'm looking at this road here, and I don't like it. It was probably fine. It was a little bit more windy than I liked and a little bit more off camber. So that would have been a low pass that I was prepared to land at if everything lined up, but I got just at the last second. And again, I probably could have landed there, but it just didn't feel right. So it's one of the ones that you move on. And if this was a regular flying edit of mine, you guys wouldn't have seen that. That's the stuff that I cut out of there. So yeah. Trying to think. I don't know how long this has been, but we got to be up there. Oh my gosh, this has been an hour. Okay. I am working my way back to the airport now. No, if any of you guys are still watching this, you guys are rad. This is by far the longest piece of content I've ever put out, and it's going to be kind of a nightmare to edit. But anyway, let's see if I can answer a couple more of these as I'm heading in. Evan Gurul. Have you ever used your plane during the making of a film or just drones? We have, just for like small stuff, for personal projects. I've never hired it out. You can't hire it out because it's experimental. It can't be used for higher compensation. So just been for personal stuff. And then a buddy of mine did chase my plane with a helicopter a few different times. You guys have seen the footage of that. I made little videos about it. He let me use the footage for free. It was a camera test on his front. And he ended up uploading some of that footage to some stock websites so that he could make some of the money back that he put into helicopter fuel. So every once in a while you might see this plane in other, films, and that's why. Ryan 14, Nussbomber, is the drone business market overcrowded? Absolutely. And going back to why I started a YouTube and all that, a portion of it was because of that. I think my outside camera died, so if you've just been seeing inside angles, that's why. But It's an absolutely overcrowded market. The cost of entry has continued to go down. The requirements as far as knowledge and skill sets and everything that it takes to do what I do has also gone down. So it's very easy for people to get into this. So there's been a couple different waves as new technologies come out where the market became completely flooded with new people. And it always ends up in a race to the bottom price-wise. So everyone's trying to be the cheapest guy out there so they can get out there and build their reel and build their resume so that they can get even more work and build their way into the industry. And for someone that is established in the industry, has already paid their dues, in that sense, it was quite frustrating. And even now, you know, the difference between, say, a DJI Inspire, which is a fairly affordable and easy to fly drone, and one of our larger platforms flying a full-blown cinema package, that the difference that you get in the added costs and the added crew that it takes for us to run the bigger setup versus something like the Inspire, it's not that big anymore. So where we fit in the market has turned into a much smaller island than it used to be. You know, go back to 2011 or 2012, we were kind of, you know, copter kids, we were the guys, some of the guys in the film industry. There was really only like 5 companies out there doing it, and we were, I think at the time we had more of the well-rounded skill set than some of the others, so we seemed to have an advantage to a lot of them. Now, you know, it's just an overcrowded market, and it's a hard thing to break into, and I get emails all the time asking, how can I get into the drone film world? And I'm like, you know, my only answer is go back to 2009 like I did, or 2010, and you know, work in a different market, because right now it's crazy. Okay, set traffic, Freedom Fox, 3 miles north, 6,000 inbound, landing runway 8. Set. Okay, Goose 124, what is the airplane you would own if money was no issue? Money was no issue to continue operating. It still might be either a Pilatus, but if it was like really money was no issue, probably a PC-24 Pilatus would be awesome, because I could bring a bunch of friends, can fly pretty far, but it still goes into the smaller strips and even like off-field strips, so that would be awesome. Toby Green, is your kit Fox turbocharged? Heck yeah. I think pretty much everything I own has a turbo on it. Truck's twin turbo, wife's car's turbo, skid steer has a turbo. The Polaris Ranger does not have a turbo, but everything else I have is turboed, and with this thing it is a game changer, because again, like where we just were, top of an 8,000 foot mountain, or almost. Okay, my camera overheated. Clearly this has been too long of a flight, but yes, plane's turbocharged. Everything I pretty much own is turbocharged. It just seems like the way of the future, you know, forced induction, especially when you live somewhere that's higher altitude and thinner air. But in an effort to save this camera and not be stuck halfway through a question, I am going to shut up and fly the pattern and land the plane. So we'll see how far I make it. Maybe we'll just see on the ground. Set traffic, Freedom Fox, left downwind 8, full stop.
All right, guys, back on the ground, safe after that flight. That went by way faster for me than I expected. Like I said, I realize now that we're like over an hour long, which is ridiculous. So if you've made it this far, you're a freaking legend. That is a long time to be hanging with me, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And I appreciate you guys in general, and I don't know if I tell you guys that enough, but this channel and what it's grown into and the community that we have is something that I'm super proud of, and it's because of you guys, so thank you for that. But before I wrap this up, I do have to take a second to tell you about the sponsor of this video, Squarespace. And I know you guys have probably heard this before, but Squarespace is honestly the ultimate way to build a website and run your business. And since you start with one of their award-winning templates that you quickly and easily craft into your own, it's like something that anyone can do, and you end up with a very professional, very functional website that works on every device. And again, they have features for every industry, so it doesn't really matter what you're trying to do with the website, you're gonna be able to do that with Squarespace. All the online storefront and POS systems, you know, professional photo galleries, members areas for creators. The list is endless of stuff you can do with Squarespace. So if you haven't yet, head over to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to purchase, go to squarespace.com/Trent Palmer. That'll get you 10% off. Thank you guys again for watching this video and for sticking through to the end. The probably like 5 of you that actually made it this far. Actually, if you make it to the end, comment below that you made it, because I want to see that. But anyway, guys, you know the drill. Like this video if you do, subscribe if you haven't. Come be my wingman. See you on the next one. Peace.